Hello everyone, welcome to VR Reviews. Before we start, I have one question for all of you. Have you ever wanted to play a game where you step into the tabi shoes of a ninja? If so, then stick around and I might have that answer for you. Today, we'll be talking about a game called Sairento VR. Sairento VR puts you in control of a character by the name of Cheiko, who is an experienced cyber ninja that belongs to a group called the Sairento Organization. A series of terrorist attacks rock Tokyo and make a major impact on society and destroy the Sairento Organization, leaving you to enter the war zone and fight these terrorists on your own. First thing I'd like to talk about are the modes. The first mode is a mission mode that randomly generates missions on maps you've already unlocked. These range from survival, which requires you to survive for a period of time, elimination, in which you have to kill all the enemies on a map, purge, in which you have to clear out several rooms of enemies, wave assault, which requires you to defeat waves of enemies on a single map, and assassination, which is similar to elimination, except after defeating all the enemies, you then have to defeat a boss character. Each mission is ranked by tier. The higher the tier, the higher the enemy's health and damage towards you will be, but you also get more loot drops and bonus XP. Occasionally, you'll also run into missions that have several modifiers active that all work against you, making the mission more challenging. These include reduced damage to enemy bodies, reduced damage of either guns or swords, only being able to jump once as opposed to 2 or more times as you normally can, and other things along these lines. The payoff with these types of missions is that you get a much higher rate of loot and a much higher chance of rare loot. The catch here is that you can only attempt the mission once, so if you fail, you are unable to retry. In addition to mission mode, there is also a challenge mode which contains an endurance and a gauntlet mode within it. In endurance mode, you simply fight for as long as you can until you are defeated. The longer you survive, the harder it gets, and the more rewards you earn. In gauntlet mode, the concept is similar to endurance, except your progress is measured by how many rooms you clear as opposed to how long you survive. And lastly, in addition to all those modes, there's also a campaign mode. This mode is pretty self-explanatory, as it's the mode that tells the game story as you play it. I won't spoil anything related to the story here, but in terms of how it's structured, you play a few campaign chapters, and about every 2 or 3 chapters, you have to go into mission mode and clear about 3 missions before continuing the story. Overall, I'm very pleased with the number and type of modes that are included here. You have your story mode, and you also have modes outside of that to mess around with so that the game doesn't just end when the story does, you still have plenty of things to do afterwards. Now these modes all sound promising, but they wouldn't really be worthwhile if the gameplay wasn't very good now, would they? Thankfully, that's not the case here. This game plays incredibly well. To start off, the controls are very well done. The movement is based on the teleportation option, which is commonly seen in a lot of VR games, which requires you to hold the locomotion button, point to where you want to move, and then letting the button go. To those of you that may panic if you're like me and are thinking to yourselves, but wait, I hate teleportation locomotion, and I need smooth locomotion to feel more immersed. I can gladly say, don't let those concerns have the slightest effect on your decision to play this. Personally, I can't imagine playing this game any other way. The way it works here is that when you point to a spot to move to, depending on the orientation of your controller, you either jump or dash there, during which you're able to initiate bullet time and either shoot or slice your enemies while you're in the air, or jump multiple more times while you're already in the air. You can also jump towards walls and either run along them or jump off of them. The game does offer smooth locomotion as a supplement to the teleportation system, and again, being someone that prefers smooth locomotion in every game that has it as an option, I never found myself needing to turn it on. I watched videos before playing this and I was skeptical myself of it being a teleportation system, but believe me when I tell you that it's incredibly well done and it's a big part of what makes the game so good. Now sure, the locomotion is well done, but how do the weapons control? Well, firstly, you have 2 primary weapons. These include swords, a bow, machine guns, and shotguns. They can be mixed up or dual-wielded, however you want. Do you want dual-wielded swords? Do you want a sword in your left hand and a shotgun in your right? You're able to do either one. Then you have 3 other weapons, which include pistols, revolvers, submachine guns, and projectile weapons such as ninja stars and kunais. To access your primary weapons, you reach to your back over your shoulder and press the button to grab weapons. To grab your secondary weapons, you reach down to your hip and grab. Then for the lower body slot, you simply reach towards your lower back and press the grab button. It's that simple, and in the heat of battle, it allows you to easily change weapons on the fly. The guns shoot as you'd expect, so I really don't think I need to explain much here. In regards to reloading, however, there is an option to auto-reload once your ammo runs out, or you can manually reload, which is done by lowering and pointing your guns down in a very similar way that you'd reload guns when playing a shooting game in an arcade. Now there are also throwing weapons, which in my opinion leave a lot to be desired. I might just be terrible at throwing them myself, but they hardly ever went wherever I wanted them to go. They'd always fly off way to the right of my intended target. I don't want to criticize something that I just might not be good at, but I found myself never using these again after trying them out for a few levels. Next, you have the swords, which are a blast to use. Again, not much to explain here, but if you own a VR headset, one thing you absolutely need to experience is the thrill of being in midair and swinging the sword down towards an enemy as you're about to land. Lastly, you have the bow, which I'd arguably say is my favorite weapon in the game, with the swords being a very close second. The bow handles very much like it does in games like The Lab and Skyrim, where you pull the string by holding the trigger and let it go by letting the button go. Hitting enemies from a distance, getting headshots, or landing hits while you're in midair are incredibly satisfying experiences. I found myself permanently using the bow as a primary weapon right from the get-go. One big issue that I had is that if my arrow came close to a corner of a wall, that the arrow would get stuck in midair. The problem here is that the hitbox for the walls are slightly outside of the actual walls themselves. On several occasions, I'd see my arrow stuck in the air next to the wall because it registered as hitting the wall even though it's not right there. This ruined several well-placed shots for me. I never stopped using the bow over this, but it is frustrating when it does happen. Last thing I'd like to mention about weapons is that you're able to deflect bullets with them. This is obviously much easier done in bullet time, of course. If you use a weapon to block a bullet, you'll either just block it or potentially deflect it back to the enemy. Now in regards to the enemies that you'll be using these weapons on, a few examples include basic enemies that shoot you with guns such as pistols, shotguns, and sniper rifles, samurais who use swords and sword attacks that are harder to kill, sumo wrestlers that charge at you and have very large health bars compared to the other enemies, geishas who fly and throw homing fan blades at you, and a few other enemies as well. The enemy variety here is quite nice and does keep you on your toes. While you're going to be a distance away shooting at several enemies, you never know when a samurai or a sumo wrestler is going to beeline right for you and hit you with a powerful melee attack. So now we've covered controls, modes, gameplay, and enemy types. I'd give a thumbs up to all of these aspects of the game as they are very well done. But now you might be asking, well, how's the replayability? What does this game do that makes me want to come back for more? Mindlessly playing random missions one after another doesn't sound like enough to keep me playing. And I would somewhat agree with you, but I say somewhat because the gameplay is that good where I do feel like you will keep coming back for the gameplay alone. But for the people that do feel like they need to be working towards something or making progress in order to keep coming back, this game's got you covered. Your character does level up as you play, which unlocks skill points that you're able to spend on a pretty massive perk tree that consists of several categories, such as health, which increases your health points, chakra, which is what gets used up during bullet time and other big actions, critical damage, or accuracy bonuses for individual weapon types, and several others. In each category, there are two different paths you can take, which you can only choose one of. For example, if you're spending points in the health tree, you can either go a path that gives you more max health, or a path that gives you faster health regen. On top of all of this, you also earn loot, which comes in the form of relics and in-game currency to spend on relics and other in-game items. These relics are essentially buffs for your character. Each relic is specific to a piece of equipment. For example, you could get a relic that you could equip on your pistol that increases bullet damage and XP gain from pistol kills. You could also gain legendary relics that boost abilities that you earn from your skill tree, such as increasing the radius of a ground slam. Overall, this game plays incredibly well and is jam-packed with content. The gameplay is smooth and fluid, and the intuitive controls really increase the immersion since you really don't have to think about them at all. The weapons handle nicely outside of the throwing weapons, in my case at least, and the enemy variety really makes you think about which weapons to use depending on the scenarios that you find yourself in. I did have a few minor issues that hindered my experience, such as the arrows hitting invisible walls and some crashing issues. However, I'd still highly recommend this game, and it's definitely one of the best experiences I've had in VR. My overall verdict is going to be a 9 out of 10.